So we should probably get started with our Simply Safe home security video here from MrBallen. I'm just kidding. This is his ad. We gotta watch the ads, not the ads. So the two that we're gonna be watching tonight, this one's called "He Should Never Have Left His Cabin," and the other one that we will watch is "What Creatures Brutally Attacked These Men in the Forest." But we'll start with this one. This is an in-video ad. One of his sponsors, so I can't skip it. How to keep yourself safe from ending up in a MrBallen video. Simply Safe. Exactly. Let me stop my music. No more music. Only MrBallen. Oh yeah, I should probably turn it up. Okay. You guys will have to let me know how the volume is. Always react to the ads. Exactly. Common courtesy, we have to play their ads. All his hiking videos have made me never want to hike. Look, the two videos that I watched previously made me super scared to go to the freaking cottage. And I'm sure this next video will too. So, that'd be great. But good thing we're not going to the cottage next year, so I guess, I guess then I don't have to worry about it. Okay, let's begin. He should never have left his cabin. But first, Simply Safe home security.
Today's video is brought to you by
loud.
Simply Safe. In 2016, 4 friends rented a small rustic cabin near a forest in a little village in Russia. Their plan was to spend the night in this cabin, and then early the next morning, they would get up and they would hike this trail that would bring them to the summit of a nearby mountain. So on March 27th, the friends got in their car, they made their way to this little village, they found their cabin, they went inside, they hung out for a bit, and then by 2 a.m., they had gone to sleep. Little did they know,
oh my God, 2
outside
a.m.
of their cabin in the forest, lurking in the darkness, something was...
By 2 a.m., I've already been sleeping for what? At least 3 or 4 hours I've already been sleeping by that time. If he never left his cabin, how would he have known to never leave?
Watching their cabin's front door, waiting for one of them to come outside. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, the next time the like button hands you their phone and tells you to please take this once-in-a-lifetime photo of them,
if anyone wants to
do it,
subscribe to
but
Mr.
leave
Ballen,
your finger over their lens.
there's his link.
Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
MrBallen. The Siberian cabin.
When most people picture Russia in their minds, they picture European Russia, which is literally the part of Russia on the western side that sits in Europe and is by far the most populated part of the country. But European Russia only accounts for 23% of the total territory that is Russia. The other 77% is to the east of European Russia.
Nobody thinks of that part of Russia.
It starts at the Ural mountain range, and it extends all the way over 5 million square miles to the Pacific Ocean. And this vast, mostly forested expanse, which is 50 times bigger than the entire United Kingdom,
I wonder if I can move there and just build my own
Siberia.
house.
And Siberia is absolutely brutal. In Siberia, it is almost always freezing cold. Literally.
Oh,
the average annual temperature across all of Siberia is 32.9 degrees Fahrenheit. So it is 0.9 degrees above freezing on average every single day. In addition to the extremely deadly weather that exists basically year-round in Siberia, Siberia is also home to a bunch of huge deadly animals, such as the brown bear,
we'll bring lots of
which is the
blankets
same as the
and
infamous
guns.
grizzly bear in North
It'll be
America,
fine.
the gray wolf, which by size alone makes virtually all other wolves look like little puppies. Gray wolves can grow.
It's fine. It's fine. I'll move there. Then I'll have a free home. I'll just clear out a little space, build my own free house. I don't have to pay anything. I'll bring lots of blankets and heaters and lots of guns and adopt one of the wolf puppies. Actually, I think about Siberia.
To be nearly 200 pounds. And of
Damn,
course,
look at
there
the size
is
of
the
that wolf.
highly intelligent Siberian tiger, who is perhaps one of the only predators on Earth that is known to seek out and kill people for revenge. For example, in 1997, a hunter named Vladimir Markov was walking through a Siberian forest when he came face to face with one of these Siberian tigers, and he ended up shooting the tiger before fleeing, except the tiger didn't die. Instead, it got up and secretly followed Vladimir all the way back to his cabin, and then this tiger camped out outside of the cabin until Vladimir came out again, and the tiger pounced, killed him, and ate him. And so, unsurprisingly,
that tiger was
Siberia
not taking
has an
no
absolutely
shit. Yeah, I got
minuscule
revenge.
population relative to its massive size. However,
tiger
there are some
was like,
adventurous
"You
people
bitch."
out there who are drawn to Siberia for the same reasons that most other people avoid it. These adventurous people see Siberia as one of the last truly wild places on our planet, and they want to experience it for themselves. And one of these highly adventurous people was a young man named Colin Madsen. Colin, who came from a very successful American...
Also, who would have thought there'd be Siberian tigers in Siberia? That tiger take the saying, revenge is best served cold. Revenge is best served cold in this cold as hell forest. You tried to shoot me, I will hunt you down. This was the tiger's thoughts, exactly.
Family was a big outdoors enthusiast who at some point in his youth began researching Siberia because he fell in love with its rugged natural beauty. He quickly began researching not only Siberia, but Siberian culture and Russian culture, and also at some point he became fluent in the Russian language. Then in 2013, when Colin was 22 years old, he left his home in Missouri and moved to Siberia.
What?
He
All the way
settled in
from
one of
Missouri?
Siberia's few population centers, a city called Irkutsk.
Missouri, misery. Every time someone talks about Missouri to me, all I can think is just misery. And I don't know why. Learning about a polite, yep, whatever that is, and the shit that goes on there has taught me to just avoid those places. Hello, alarm. Welcome in.
Which is located in the southeast of Siberia and right along the edge of Lake Baikal, which is the world's deepest freshwater lake. Colin's Siberia plan was twofold. He would go to school while he was there, and he would go out and explore. And at first, his plan went perfectly. He was accepted into Moscow State Linguistic University in Irkutsk, and very quickly he made friends who were eager to accompany him on his adventures out into the Siberian wilderness. From his arrival in Siberia in 2013 to 2016, Colin did well in his studies, and he spent countless hours exploring the forests and mountainous areas all around Lake Baikal and right outside of Irkutsk. In fact, Colin became so familiar with this region that he began volunteering with a nonprofit in the area that went around marking new trails, which meant Colin was literally venturing into the wilds of Siberia and just marking the trail as he went. So when Colin's family heard about what happened to him in 2016, they could not believe it. In March of 2016, Colin and 3 of his good hiking friends, one was American and 2 were Russian, decided they wanted to go on a hike together. They settled on hiking to the summit of Love Peak, which was a mountain located a few hours away from Irkutsk in a small village called Arshan. This hike was nothing compared to the gnarly Siberian wilderness hikes all 4 of these guys had been on before. The trail that led up to Love Peak, it was fairly steep, but it was incredibly well marked, and all 4 of these guys had hiked it several times before. However, because Colin and his friends were so experienced at hiking in Siberia, they knew that even the easiest hikes needed to be respected because Siberia was still Siberia. There were dangers that lurked everywhere. And so the men called ahead to the village of Arshan and they rented one of these small rustic cabins that's in the village that sits right at the base of Love Peak, and it's kind of tucked away in this forest. And so this cabin would serve as their sort of base camp and would allow them to arrive in Arshan, get their gear together, and then when they were ready, they could begin this hike to the summit. And so a few days later, on March 27th,
so it sounds like they had everything well planned out.
Loaded up their car and they drove west to Arshan. And when they got there, they stopped at a local store and got some supplies.
Renting the cabin
and then
was
made their way to their cabin. Their cabin was just a single room with a few beds inside of it.
Oh
my God! It was enough to protect them from the elements, but really nothing more.
By the way, if you want to rent this, that'll be like $5,000 a month. Furniture probably not included. Heat and hydro separate, water, no internet. $5,000 a month to rent.
As for a toilet, the cabin didn't have one, but there was an outhouse outside that they could use.
Oh my God.
So after the friends moved into the cabin and
made
their beds and put their things down, they all sat down and began prepping their gear and eating some food and chatting. And then finally, at 2 a.m., they decided they needed to go to sleep because their plan was to get on...
Bro, I would not be able to rent this place knowing there is no toilet inside, okay? Because if I had to... Most of the time, I wake up in the middle of the night and I have to pee, and if I had to go out into a dark-ass forest to freaking pee, I would pee inside. There's no way that I would be going out into the pitch darkness to go pee. Hell no. I'm gonna buy a place like this later.
The path up to Love Peak by 7 a.m., which meant they needed to get up at 5 a.m. to make their final preparations.
Pee in the there you go, pee in the shower.
The lights in the cabin turned off and friends all fell asleep. And then 3 hours later at 5 a.m., when the lights came back on again, it was immediately clear something was wrong. Colin was not in his bed. His friends assumed, when they looked over at his bed and saw his personal belongings were all still there, that Colin must have gotten up and headed outside, maybe to use the outhouse or go for a quick walk, and they just hadn't heard him leaving. And so the three friends initially just kind of shrugged off Colin's absence and said, you know, he'll be back any minute, most likely, and if for some reason he's not back soon, he'll certainly be back by 7 a.m., because that was the agreed upon time they would leave for this hike. But as the minutes ticked closer and closer to 7 a.m. and Colin still had not shown up or tried to call them or do anything, the friends started to worry. It just didn't make any sense that Colin would just get up and leave without telling them where he was going. Finally, at 7 a.m., when Colin still had not shown up and the friends' cursory search of the outside area near the cabin had yielded no results, they decided they had to tell someone. And so they wrote a note addressed to Colin, and they put it on the front of their cabin door. And this note basically just told Colin,
Colin, stay here. We'll be right back. Get in touch with a neighbor if you go to the police. Leave? We're searching for you. What? Time we were camping in the middle of the night, we heard an animal being attacked. Oh no. That's terrible.
You know, if you come back here and you see this note, know that we're looking for you. So stay put or tell someone you're here. And so after putting up this note, the friends left the cabin and they headed to the nearest police station where they reported Colin missing. The police would eventually launch this huge search in and around Arshan, both in the forested area right around the village and then also up into the mountains near Love Peak. But despite this huge effort, no one could find Colin, at least not at first.
Oh, damn.
A couple of months ago,
happened
I
to
was laying in
Colin?
bed when I heard this strange tapping sound coming from my
Oh, hell
downstairs.
no.
Now, as I'm laying there, I'm trying to run through the different scenarios of what this sound could be when this tapping sound gets louder and louder, and then all of a sudden, I hear the sound of glass breaking in my first floor. And so I
would die.
immediately leap out of bed, I run down the hall, I go downstairs, and I'm looking across my living room, and there, coming through my now broken window, was everyone's worst nightmare. I can't even say
It was a Siberian
everyone's
tiger.
worst nightmare. A great I literally can't even say it. It's so stupid. Was everyone's worst nightmare. A great white shark wearing a special breathing apparatus, who was carrying
Oh my
a
god,
crowbar,
look at those
looking
stinky
to
ass
rob-
shark feet.
carrying a crowbar coming into my home to try to rob me. Now, luckily, I had prepared for
Oh,
this
hell
moment,
no.
and I had a Civil War era cannon
Oh my god, we have a
installed
cannon.
in my first floor, aimed
All right.
at that window just in case this
dirty
happened.
feet
And so
shark
within
ain't
seconds,
ready
I
for
was
this.
firing that cannon off, and Mr. Land Shark was land dead. Now, of course, most of you are thinking, come on, John, that's crazy, but that'll never happen to me. And you'd be wrong. Because studies have shown 100% of all people in the world will at some point come face to
Hello, Fordham,
face
thank
with
you
a
for the
predatory land shark who is attempting to rob your home. And so if that hasn't happened to you yet, it's time to prepare. And that means
man.
two things. One, installing Civil War
I gotta
era
get the
cannons
cannon.
on your first floor aimed at the various windows. And two,
Look
signing
out
up
for that on my
SimpliSafe.
throne.
SimpliSafe is an incredibly
Oh,
effective and
SimpliSafe
easy-to-use
security.
home security system. Once it's installed, SimpliSafe agents will monitor your home 24/7.
Next item on my throne
and they
will be the cannon.
immediately dispatch police, firefighters, or EMTs in an emergency, like when the inevitable land shark attempted burglary on your home occurs.
Oh my God.
SimpliSafe is also super cheap. It's less than $1 a day. Also with SimpliSafe, there are no long-term contracts. So, like they always say, there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and an attempted burglary on your home by a land shark. You can't do
No,
anything
it's a
about the
30
first two,
feet
but
shark.
you can definitely stop the third one from happening if you sign up for SimpliSafe and install Civil War era cannons in your home. Save up to 40% on your SimpliSafe security system during SimpliSafe's biggest sale of the year. Visit simplisafe.com/MrBallen to customize yours. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Okay,
SimpliSafe.
back to the story.
Go get that cannon. 40% off. Use MrBallen.
On
Who's called
Monday,
Mr. Ballen?
April 4th, so 8 days into Colin's disappearance, a group of searchers were looking in the forest about 1 mile away from the cabin where Colin and his friends had been staying. And they look up ahead and they see there is this clearing and there's something in the middle of it. And so the searchers begin
Ooh.
moving their way towards this clearing, ducking under branches and stepping
let's
over
go look.
brush. And when they get close enough, they can see Colin is in the clearing. And Colin is deceased. He was laying flat on his back with his left arm extended out to the side.
Oh, that was a real
and his
photo.
right arm extended but closer to his body. And both of his hands were clenched in tight fists. And on his hands and his wrists were visible abrasions and cuts,
Oh,
which later
what
would
the
be
hell?
determined to have most likely been caused from someone or something holding onto him, trying to restrain Colin. Colin also had visible abrasions and cuts on the front of his neck.
What the
Colin's
hell?
clothing, which consisted of a long-sleeve thermal shirt, heavy pants, and hiking boots, were ripped and torn in several places. And interestingly, Colin was not wearing socks under his boots.
Oh,
now
no,
that
not the
seems
socks.
inconsequential, but Colin had had surgery on both of his ankles and had scar tissue on his ankles that if he didn't have socks on, those scars would rub against the inside of his boot. And he said it was very painful. So he
Youch.
always wore socks. Also, Colin's body showed virtually no signs of decomposition, and all of his wounds and abrasions looked, quote, fresh, according to medical personnel. In short, Colin looked like he had recently been in some sort of physical altercation, and whoever
What the
or
hell?
whatever he was grappling with
See, this is why I said you can't go out peeing in the middle of the damn night with a freaking outhouse. He probably got up, went to go pee, and was like, I'm just gonna go pee in the outhouse. La-di-da. And then some freaking dirty feet land shark Siberian tiger thing, like, attacked him or something. What the hell? What
had
the
eventually
hell?
overpowered him and killed him. although it was not clear how he actually died. Russian authorities were very quick to suspect Colin's 3 friends who had been with him, but they were brought into the station and they denied having
That's why you
anything
bring
to
the
do with
cannon.
Colin's death, and they
Colin
all
didn't
passed
get the
their lie
memo.
detector tests. After that, Russian authorities quickly closed this case by concluding that, well, if his friends didn't do it, then that means Colin must have been high on drugs or drinking alcohol or both, and he just wandered out of his cabin and he got lost in the woods and he died.
If his
of
friends
hypothermia.
didn't
He
kill
froze to
him,
death.
well,
The
it's obviously his
However,
own fault.
Colin's parents just could not accept that as being what happened to their son. There were a lot of reasons for skepticism, but the main one was that Colin was an absolute expert at navigating this particular region of Siberia. And so the idea that he would leave his cabin for a quick walk or something and get so completely lost that he would die 8 days later seemed way too far-fetched. And so Colin's parents hired a US-based private lab to do a review of Russia's autopsy of Colin to give their opinion if the autopsy was accurate or not. And this US-based lab pretty much immediately found that the Russian autopsy
Oh my god, they
was not
freaking have to
remotely
bring
accurate.
it to the US.
Number one, Colin was not under the influence of alcohol or drugs. He
That
was
should have
sober.
been easy to
Although technically he
figure
did
out.
have very small amounts of THC in his urine.
Not
THC is
THC.
the chemical that is found in marijuana, but the amount was so little, it basically meant he had consumed the THC days before he went missing. And so he would not have been remotely affected by that small amount
That should
of
have been the
THC
easiest
in his
thing to
system.
rule out if
Number
he was
two,
on drugs
the
or
lab
anything.
determined that Colin almost certainly did not die from hypothermia. Instead, all signs pointed to Colin dying from being suffocated, meaning he was murdered.
Bro. Did he not say they found him with literal strangulation abrasions around the neck? And nobody thought, oh, maybe he was strangled. Because there's literally strangulation things on his freaking neck. Who the heck is working on these teams? What the hell? Oh my gosh.
Someone crushed his
Oh my
airway
gosh.
or in some way restricted him from breathing, and that's what killed him. And three, based on the lack of decomposition, the freshness of the injuries on Colin's body, and the lack of animal predation on his body when they found him, indicated that Colin did not just wander out of his cabin and immediately die somewhere in the forest. Instead, he was alive for most of the time people were looking for him. Meaning when they found him, he likely had died within hours of being found. And so these findings by this US-based lab kind of create a general theory about what must have happened to Colin. After Colin left the cabin in the early morning hours of March 28th, maybe to go to the outhouse or to go for a quick walk, when he went outside, someone or something was nearby, and they either lured Colin to them or they straight up ambushed Colin and took him away. Now, we have no idea what happened to Colin after he was abducted, but we can safely assume that after being abducted and taken somewhere, he was alive, and he stayed alive for several days until on the 8th day of his disappearance, Colin was killed, likely by his captor, either at the spot where he was found, or he was killed somewhere else, maybe in the forest, and then moved to the spot where he was found. Many people believe it was the Russian government who targeted Colin, they kidnapped him, and they killed him. And their botched investigation into his death was actually a calculated cover-up. Colin had participated in at least one peaceful environmentalist-led protest in Siberia, and after the protest, Colin apparently got a written warning by the Russian police not to attend another protest. But why would Colin, who was just one of many people involved in these protests, be singled out by the Russian government
'cause he's
and
from the
killed
US.
for his participation? And why would the government elect to kill Colin when he was with 3 of his closest friends who would immediately notice his absence? It just doesn't add up. Today, Colin's parents are still trying to figure out what happened to their son, but unfortunately, their son's case is closed in Russia.
It's almost
and
10
so
years
no one
later.
on the Russian side is talking to the parents or giving them any new information. And so as a result, they and the rest of us are left to wonder who or what was lurking in the shadows when Colin stepped out of the cabin that morning. And then where did they take him? And what did they do to him for nearly a week before they killed him deep inside of that Siberian forest?
Damn.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, the next time the like button hands you their phone and asks you to take a once-in-a-lifetime photo of them, agree to do it, but leave your finger over their lens. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. We have a podcast called the MrBallen Podcast that puts out brand new podcast exclusive stories on Monday mornings.
Did I know
and
he
on
had a
Thursday mornings,
podcast?
we put out the remastered audio of our best YouTube videos. Right now, that podcast
subscribe
is
to his
available on
podcast.
all platforms. But on November 1st of this year, 2022, that podcast is being moved exclusively
2022, and
to
then
Amazon
again.
Music. We have a registered 501c3 charitable organization called the MrBallen Foundation that makes it as easy as possible for you to join me, my family, and my team in supporting those whose lives have been most impacted by violent and heinous crimes. Monthly donors to the MrBallen Foundation Honor Them Society will receive free gifts and exclusive invites to special live events. But the real reward is helping to rewrite the ending to the story for victims of violent crime. Go to MrBallen.Foundation and click on Get Involved to join the Honor Them
MrBallen.Foundation.
Society today. We have 2 additional YouTube channels. One is called MrBallen Shorts. The other is called MrBallen en Español. We also post near daily content on TikTok, Facebook, and Snapchat. All of those pages are just called MrBallen. If you want to get in touch with me, please follow me on any major social media platform and then
Follow
send
Mr.
me a
Ballen.
direct message. My username on all of them is @MrBallen, and
He
I
is
really do read the
awesome.
majority of my DMs. We also have some really cool merchandise, so head on over to shopmrballen.com. And if you have a story suggestion, please submit it on our subreddit, just called
Ooh.
Mr. Ballen. It's linked in the description below.
I
So
didn't know you
whether
could
I
do
see
that
you on
either.
Twitter,
Well, there you
Instagram,
go.
TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, other YouTube channels, the podcast, wherever, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.